Hello, this is rptv and my name is Dimitri Martinovic. On today's episode, we will be speaking with Walied Khogali, a Regent Park resident, community activist, and someone who is committed to seeing his community benefit from the redevelopment of Regent Park. Walied works with the Regent Park Coalition, a residents' rights organization seeking to secure a community benefits framework agreement between themselves, to Toronto Community Housing, and the City of Toronto. Let's join Walied now as he outlines the work of the coalition, its goals, and its expectations. Welcome, Walied, to rptv. And before we begin our interview, can you just, where we'll be talking about the community benefits, the revitalization, and the work of the coalition, I wonder if you could just tell me a little bit about yourself, how you came to be working with the coalition, what did you do before, and that kind of thing.
So my name is Walied Khogali. I'm a resident of Regent Park. And I'm a community activist, an organizer. My family grew up here in Regent Park. We were here before the first phases of redevelopment. In fact, we used to live on Bartholomew before the new buildings were introduced. And I have fond memories of our community, that basically wanted more. Because of the economic disparity that exists in our city. So when the opportunity came up to redevelop our community, I was involved in making sure that folks in the community got the information they needed so that we could advocate collectively for better facilities, good jobs, and other economic support systems that will better support our community.
Can you tell us what does community benefits refer to exactly?
Community benefits are a basic way for communities to secure the investments that are needed in our community that will generate good jobs, community spaces, as well as facilities that the community requires. Community benefits is a concept where developers just don't build developments without consulting the community. So it basically requires that the community be consulted on their needs, and for those needs to be reflected in the development that will happen in the community. Some examples of community benefits could be, the amazing, for example, recreational spaces we have in Regent Park, such as the Pam McConnell, Aquatic Center, or community centers. But it also means good jobs, making sure that the funds that have been invested by our federal and provincial and municipal government are put to creating good jobs for the community, because we're dealing with the forces of gentrification. As you're aware, home prices in Regent Park on average are over $1 million. And what we hope is we create a city of not just millionaires, but a city that actually respects the needs of our essential residents. Now with the pandemic, we refer to them as essential workers, but many of those essential workers are actually living paycheck to paycheck, if not almost in poverty. So community benefits is a means for us to basically bring some economic justice for our community.
Now, why you in particular? Why are you involved in the process and the project of getting the community benefits in Regent Park?
To be honest, I'm frustrated by the irresponsible development that happens in our community. I was really shocked that in the first phases of redevelopment of Regent Park, we only created two dozen or about 30 something full-time jobs while billions of dollars were invested. And when I'm working with our youth in our community who complain about access to good jobs and opportunities, it frustrates me when our government or our developers don't pay attention to the needs of the residents of Regent Park. So the reason why I'm involved as a resident, as someone who loves my community, is to demand better for our community. And we want to use the economic tools that are available, which is to lobby our representatives to make sure that we have in place a community benefits agreement that will hold all parties accountable to responsible development, which means that the development has to be informed by the community and be supported by our community. And that will require hard targets, meaning holding all parties accountable to the creation of those good jobs, but also the creation of facilities that better meets the needs of our community.
So when you are traveling around in Regent Park and talking with other people who live in Regent Park, what can you say to them? Why should they, as residents, become involved in the work of the coalition and getting the benefits that you are fighting for?
Well, it's a historic opportunity. This is the last phase of redevelopment of Regent Park, and we have no other opportunity to influence how our neighborhood is developed, and specifically how we are able to secure community benefits for our community. So I want the residents of Regent Park to get involved, because if they don't, other people will make decisions on their behalf. And it's crucial that the residents of Regent Park play an integral, if not in fact, a leading role, not just an integral role in what is developed in our community and what type of jobs will be created in our community and what type of facilities will be built in our community.
Waleed, can you tell us a little bit more about the work of the coalition?
Yes, the coalition is an amazing platform for residents to be involved, because we're joined by not just residents but also other stakeholders, representatives from agencies that service our community. And the coalition actually has been instrumental in helping TCHC better understand the needs of our community. We actually just signed a community benefits framework that outlines specifically the path to which TCHC will deliver community benefits. We also were able to consult residents on the community's needs. We actually had community meetings that basically informed a community priorities report, which speak to some key priorities that the community have identified. For example, a pathway to home ownership. I know many of your viewers have asked that question multiple times on how can we access home ownership and home equity so we could be able to continue to live in this city and specifically in our neighborhood. So we've introduced proposals that basically improve on the economic tools that already exist. So, for example, developers introduced the Boost program, which is a program that will help some residents be able to afford some of these homes. What we're doing now is calling on the federal and provincial government to provide more support for potential homeowners, for the residents of Regent Park, so that they're on a pathway to home ownership.
You know, on your website, you include the report of what has happened over the last 10 years. So in part of the report, it cites what has happened with the Boost program and the other extra programs that have been made available to residents. But in both cases, in those cases, both of those programs fell through. Can you speak to that a bit?
Well, when the programs were created, homes were worth about, on average, $300,000 due to the increase in real estate value of those homes from 300,000 to almost over a million, 1 point something million dollars in a span of less than a decade, in fact, about 5 years. It basically made the program not sustainable because the funds that were allocated by our governments could not meet the demand. So they basically postponed or deferred the program until they were able to better support residents. And that's what we're calling on. We're calling for more investments in our community so that we do have the means to be able to access home ownership and also good jobs. Because when you also develop a community, you get a choice what type of jobs you create. Are you going to create good jobs, full-time jobs, benefits and job security? Or are you going to create precarious jobs that will only allow people to live in a phase of poverty and never be able to find economic empowerment? So what we're hoping to do is make sure that in the last phases of the redevelopment of Regent Park, we empower residents by making sure that they do have access to programs like Boost and foundational programs that help folks access homeownership, but they're also able to access good jobs. So they're able to continue to live in our community and be able to pay for their homes and other expenses. So what we know is that these programs can work if there's political will and if there is the investments that we deserve. And by the way, the city is going to be making a lot of money from the sale of homes and public land. So we need to make sure that that does not in any way contradict the public interest, which is to secure adequate good jobs and a pathway to home ownership for the residents of Regent Park.
Well, speaking about the last stages now, the TCHC has committed to allow residents an opportunity to help select the developer that will build their community. What happened to that vote that took place Saturday, October 5th, 2019, where residents scored the three developers, the Daniels Corporation, Capital Developments, and Tridale Builders. Each of those companies were vying for the rights to do the final stages. Can you tell us about what has happened to all of that since then?
Well, thank you for that question. Well, I will say the following. Residents of Regent Park were told that they will have a say on who the developer of their community will be. And that process was going to be a way for the community to be engaged and involved so that the TCHC will shortlist the developers from 3 to 2 or 3 to, or 3 to 1. But that will have been an opportunity for residents to be able to influence the process by scoring the developers. A lot of residents came out. A lot of residents were enthusiastic about that process because they wanted to hear more from the developers about their plans for the community. And those residents also came out to our community meetings. Hundreds of residents actually came to our community meetings where they were able to score their priorities. And what we hope to do is measure their priorities with ours, right? And unfortunately, after the process was concluded, we were told that all three developers will actually be moved forward.
What does that mean?
Which means that whatever we did on that Saturday didn't have any influence whatsoever on which developers will be selected. That led to a lot of disappointment in the community. In fact, earlier this year at a community update meeting of TCHC, residents raised that point. I actually also spoke at that meeting, pointing to the commitment made, but also sharing the disappointment of many residents that they did not have a say on which developer will be selected. And we hope that TCHC and the developers take that priorities report seriously, because that is the last means for us to influence this process unless it's delayed. And we're now in the midst of a pandemic. So as you're aware, because of physical distancing measures, we can't have those large meetings where we're able to consult with residents. So we're hoping to use technology like Zoom and other ways to try to get feedback from our community on what steps we need to take next.
So with those changes, what should we expect now to hear more about the community benefits process? Where does that leave everyone? Will there be more community update meetings hosted by the TCH to inform residents about what's going on?
That's an excellent question. We actually met with Toronto Community Housing last week on Friday, and we made that ask. We insisted that we need to have a community update meeting to inform residents about the process and also about the status of their priorities and how they will be included in the final proposal that will be approved by the TCHC board later on this year. And we're working together. The coalition is working with Toronto Community Housing to secure a community updates meeting as soon as possible. In fact, hopefully as early as next week, we'll have our first planning meeting to help develop a community updates meeting in June of 2020. This is after a community meeting in May that will focus on the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on Regent Park and on the not just economic, but also on the mental well-being of residents in the community who might require additional support services. So after that meeting is done in May, we hope in June we will focus specifically on the community response to the community benefits, not just framework that we signed, but also on a potential community benefits agreement that will outline the commitments made by all parties.
So in that report I was talking about earlier on that's on your website, it lists the total number of jobs, the total of dollars invested directly and indirectly by the TCHC and Daniels Corporation over the 10 years before the coalition was formed, before the notion of community benefits became a part of the discussion when builders and communities started to work together. How does what happened in those 10 years compare to what you're looking for now? Because some of the figures that I have here, that in those 10 years, only something like 348 job trainings were actually happened. What kinds of things are you looking for today?
Hoping to today is make sure that we improve on the little community benefits that we received in the first couple of phases. So, for example, I love Daniel Spectrum. It's a great space where people can actually be able to provide programming. But we also need a community-run space. Community managed space, and we're actually making that ask. We also want to make sure that our social enterprises that have been created by residents of Regent Park that are creating jobs, that they find a home in Regent Park.
Willie, here's another question. What happens when and if you don't get what you're requesting? What happens? What are your priorities, and what would you say are the three things that you won't budge on?
Well, we won't budge on the importance of having a community benefits agreement that delivers on good jobs. We won't budge on the need for community spaces, specifically community-controlled spaces that allow our youth, the mothers in our community that are doing great work supporting the community for them to gain economic empowerment. And we're not going to budge on a pathway to home ownership because of the impact of gentrification. as a resident of Regent Park, I'm really disappointed that we've lost so many of our neighbors because of the cost of living going up. You know, when we have events, whether they're spiritual or sports events, you know, when you see folks that used to live in our community but now live outside of the city because they just are not able to continue to live in our community, we can do better than that. I think we can make sure that folks in this community are able to not just live, but grow and actually be successful, and actually point to this collaboration through a community benefits approach being a success for the world to look at.
So I guess by now everyone knows what the Daniels Corporation has done in Regent Park. What do you think about the other two corporations, the other two builders? What kind of track record do they have, and what kind of relationship have you been able to establish with them in terms of gaining the community benefits that you're looking for?
Well, we've shared the community priorities report with TCHC that has informed us that they've shared it with all three developers. I've asked them to review the community priorities report as a measure of what the community needs are. And, you know, yes, we've had a relationship with Daniels Corp because they've been here for a long time. They were the first developers, are the ones who were the main investor when it pertains to the redevelopment of Regent Park, apart from our other levels of government. With regards to other developers, I don't have a personal relationship with any of those developers or Daniels. I'm here to advocate on behalf of my community. And what I will be doing is advocating that they put forward the best proposal that will meet the needs of the residents of Regent Park. And if we're able to reach an agreement, then we will work together. But we will not compromise on the needs of the community at any level and at any time when we deal with developers.
So can you say just where, if people want to find out more about the work of the coalition or become involved with your project, where can they find that out?
They can go to www.regentparkcoalition.ca, and I hope my friend could probably put it up on the video as well with a hyperlink if possible. But we want to hear from you. You know, we're trying to create a community on our website as well. We have information now, but because of the pandemic, we're going to hopefully introduce tools that will allow residents to communicate directly with each other with regards to the community benefits movement in Regent Park. And we hope to also co-host a community updates meeting with TCHC, so Toronto Community Housing, specifically on community benefits, where residents will have also an opportunity to communicate what their needs are and what they hope will happen in the final phases of the redevelopment of Regent Park, specifically phase 4 and 5.
Thank you, Walied, for that thorough explanation of what the Regent Park Community Benefits Coalition is doing for the residents of Regent Park. My name is Dimitri Martinovic, and you've been watching rptv News. Join us again when we continue to bring you stories and issues of critical importance to our community.
Like, share, and subscribe to our channel. For more information, follow us on all our social media platforms. And don't forget to visit our website, as well as comment down below what you thought about this video.